Now it's time to hear from our first speaker, Clara Bird, who is a graduate student in the Geospatial Ecology of Marine Megafauna Lab. So that's GEM for short. And so that's part of the Marine Mammal Institute at Oregon State University. She's going to tell us about her path leading up to graduate school, and then also show what it's like to use drone footage to study the body condition and behavioral ecology of gray whales. And so Clara, you may now go ahead and start your video and share your screen and begin your presentation.
Okay, great. Yes. Okay, can you see that?
I can.
Great. Perfect. Hi, everyone. Okay. My name is Clara Bird. I'm a PhD student in the Geospatial Ecology of Marine Megafauna Lab, GEM Lab for short. That name is a bit of a mouthful. Basically, it means that we're interested in studying the spatial ecology of marine megafauna. So marine megafauna are big animals that live in the ocean, like whales or seabirds, dolphins, otters, turtles, etc. And then spatial ecology is that we're interested in studying the relationship between these animals and their habitat. So why are they living in the habitat that we find them in? But before I talk about my research, first I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me and my path that got me to graduate school at Oregon State. So first, I grew up in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is maybe an unexpected state for someone who studies the ocean. I grew up loving the ocean. My mom is actually from Spain, so I was very lucky to grow up snorkeling in the Mediterranean every summer when I visited my family, looking at all the critters. I got my scuba certification when I spent my summers there. Loved the ocean, loved snorkeling. And then I remember when I was 9 or 10, I was watching Nova, that PBS science show on TV, and something about the ocean, I don't remember what, and there was a woman was speaking, and the little label said, Dr. whatever, marine biologist. And that was a moment that I realized this was a job that I could professionally study the ocean, which sounded like the coolest thing ever to 10-year-old me. I announced to my parents that that was what I was going to do with my life. And well, kind of pulled it off. So worked out pretty well for me, but the path has been a windy one for sure. Growing up in high school in Michigan, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to study marine science specifically, but I took a lot of science courses and then was lucky enough to participate in a high school program of the Sea Semester program that is out of Woods Hole in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And so I spent 3 weeks there, 9 days on land, taking some courses over the summer, and then we spent 9 days doing research from a tall ship in the Atlantic off of Cape Cod. Which was a really great chance to actually get to do marine science instead of just saying I wanted to do it because the information was cool. Based on those passions and what I like to do, I looked for a university for college that offered me the opportunity to study marine science, even though I also wanted the chance to do something else if it turned out 10-year-old me was wrong and it wasn't the coolest thing ever. So I did my undergrad at Duke University in North Carolina, which has a marine lab, much like OSU, separate from Maine campus on the coast. When I was there, I majored in biology and environmental science with concentrations in ecology and marine science and conservation. But aside from the courses that I took, the most important part of my experience in undergrad as it pertains to my career was the research that I got to do. And so I don't know about you, but when I was an undergrad, I thought that I had to be doing research in what I wanted to ultimately be doing. If I wanted to do marine science research, I should do marine science research. But actually, it's really good to do research outside of that just to get your feet wet, just to start doing research. You can learn a lot about the scientific process and what it's like to do research without studying the thing that you might ultimately want to do in grad school or beyond. So my first research experience was actually studying a species of algae in the Mediterranean in Spain. We knew someone who was a PhD student in Spain, and for a month she let me volunteer, follow her around, help her out studying this algae. That inspired me to really want to do research. So in my third year of undergrad, my junior year, I did a project looking at Venus flytraps. in a greenhouse at Duke, which again, totally unrelated to what I do now, but that gave me a chance to design an experiment, learn how to do analysis, and learn how to write a paper. After that, I took a class in a computer program called ArcGIS, which is a mapping software. Really liked it, really liked its applications. I knew of a professor at Duke who was using drones to study the marine environment and was using GIS to analyze the drone imagery. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm coming to the Marine Lab for a semester. I want to do a project using GIS, this computer program, and drones. Do you have anything? And he said, yeah, count penguins, which is not what I was expecting. But he had thermal imagery of Adelie penguin colonies in Antarctica, and he wanted to see if we could use this computer software to count the number of penguins without having someone do it by hand, so automatically do it. And this is what that thermal imagery looks like. So as you can see here, all of these kind of dark areas are the colonies. And then as you can see in this zoom in image, every white speck is a penguin. So for someone to do this by hand would take a long time. I had to do it by hand first, and it took me a 1 week straight to manually click every penguin in this image. But then I was able to use the computer to isolate every little white dot and to count them for me. But I'm curious about how many penguins you think there are before I tell you. So, Kate, if you could put up the poll, just knowing that every dark kind of area like this, these are all colonies with the little white specks. Every white speck is a penguin. How many penguins do you think there are?
We have about half the folks have voted.
Okay.
Looks like some people are changing their votes.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps. 75% have voted.
Okay.
Make a commitment.
You can do it. Just guess.
I'm going to cut it off in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay. Nicely done, everyone. The answer was it's about 60,000. So it's between 50,000 and 70,000. So good job to the 46% of you that said that. Although honestly, I wouldn't blame anyone for any of the other answers because it's really hard. There's so many of them. There's actually about 60,200, we think. But as you can see, this is the output from the computer program that I wrote. And so every blue dot is a penguin. And there's a lot. And the computer took 20 minutes to do it. And it took me like 24 plus hours to manually count every penguin in the image. But yeah, which was one of the cool applications of drones. And I really enjoyed this experience. My advisor kind of dropped me in the deep end of the project of just letting me have the data and try and figure out how to make this image analysis algorithm. And it was a really cool experience for me. And I definitely wanted to do more research. So the next thing that I did was a summer internship through the NSF REU program. So the NSF is the National Science Foundation. The REU program is the Research Experience for Undergraduate program, which there's also an REU available at Hatfield. And so this is funding for different universities to host undergrads over the summer and pay them to do research. So I did my REU at the Bigelow Lab for Ocean Science in Maine, where I did a remote sensing project. So I analyzed satellite imagery of ocean color. I did a time series analysis. Might be surprising to you, I don't do anything like this anymore. It was just that one summer, and I went in knowing that I didn't want to do color remote sensing for my career, but what I did get out of it was a really good computer science background. So to do this analysis, I had to teach myself the coding language Python, and so that's what I did. 10 weeks every day. I had 2 amazing mentors, and the skills that I learned, the coding, the analysis, how to present my research, are some of the most important skills that I use today. I still think of this internship, even though the research is nothing like what I do now, as one of the most important experiences of my career so far in helping me realize what I wanted to do. It was also great because I spent all summer doing this, nothing else, no school, no classes. So it also showed me that I could do research all day, every day and not get bored, and kind of just sit and code for a whole summer and not get bored. So it also helped me know that grad school was probably something I wanted to do. Then I went back to Duke for my last year, and I did a senior thesis, again, looking at the penguin data, did a 3D analysis, still enjoyed it. And this was all with the Duke Marine Robotics and Remote Sensing Lab. And then I was thinking about what to do after college. Didn't think I was quite ready for grad school, so I told my advisor that I was interested in sticking around and potentially working as a research technician for him for a year. And then I got really lucky that he found the funding and he hired me to stay. So after graduating, I stayed in North Carolina for 1 year as a research technician, where I actually got to work on a marsh project, do more penguin stuff, and this is also where I got to work on whales for the first time. I was helping a PhD student do some research that I'll tell you about in a minute. But aside from all the projects I got to do, I actually didn't spend a lot of time studying biology or ecology. I spent a lot of time studying programming and analysis methods and dealing with a lot of technical things that, while not the most fascinating of subjects, have actually given me a really strong background of information that I found really useful now that I'm in grad school. So I got to practice using Python, GIS, and R, and kind of build a technical skill set that I really enjoy, the kind of technical things, but it's also been super helpful to me in grad school. I also got to go to Antarctica. So I went with a PhD student to collect drone imagery of humpback whales. This is an outline of the Antarctic continent. So we were working on the Western Antarctic Peninsula, which is that little peninsula that comes up close to South America. This is us in the boat really close to this humpback on our first day. And we were collecting this imagery to do photogrammetry, which I'll tell you about in a minute. The experience was amazing. These are some of my favorite images. Just to get down there, I got to see the penguins that I had studied for 2 years as that to me for 2 years were blobs in an image on my computer screen. Got to get experience doing field work, actually how do we collect data using drones. I had gotten pretty good at analysis, but didn't know much about the process of collecting the data. Got to see some pretty amazing sights and got to get some marine mammal field work, which all led up to where I am now, which is doing my PhD in wildlife science as part of the GEM lab in the Marine Mammal Institute at Oregon State University. So I'm in the Fisheries and Wildlife Department, and I'm using drones now to study the body condition and behavior of gray whales. So this image is what our field work looks like now. We work right out of Newport. We go and then we kind of go up to Depot Bay and kind of south to Seal Rock, if you know the area. And we study the Pacific Coast feeding group of gray whales that they actually, for their foraging season, so the gray whales breed in Mexico and then they migrate all the way up north to find their food in the summer. Most of them go up to Alaska, but there's a small group that actually stops to feed off of the Pacific Northwest. And we study those whales because they come super close to Newport. If you've ever been along the West Coast, and you might have seen a gray whale blow in the distance because of how close they are. And we study them using drones. So we go out in our trusty little research vessel, Ruby, and we go and we fly over the whales, which is pretty incredible. And drones are actually a super cool tool to use to study whales because of the different perspective they give us. They're also safer, more affordable, more efficient, and they give us really high quality imagery. So as you can see here, we can launch and recover the drone from a small boat, which is really handy instead of having to be in a plane or a helicopter. So if we see a whale, we can launch the drone in under 5 minutes, and we can get this perspective from above, which allows us to get some really cool data that we couldn't before, like for photogrammetry, which photogrammetry basically just means the science of measuring things from images. It could be applied to not just drone imagery, images of anything. But it's the first time that we can actually get measurements of a live whale without having to capture it or kill it, especially the big baleen whales. The last measurements, the measurements in your encyclopedias or fun facts are all from whaling, when the whales were being killed and then they were measured on land. We can measure them when they're alive and happy in the water. And I've gotten to look at images of minke whales, humpback whales, and blue whales, in addition to the gray whales I study now. And I like these images with the zodiac because it gives you a perspective on how different the sizes are, right? So this minke whale, the smallest baleen whale, is about the same size as a boat. And the baleen whales are the ones with the baleen plates in their mouths, and they filter feed instead of bite. And then this blue whale, compared to the zodiac, is just massive. The GEM lab, my lab now, also uses the surface area that we get from the drone imagery to assess how fat they are, which is what we're really interested in when we're talking about health. Is there a fat whale as a happy whale? And then I also use it for behavior. So to study the behavior of a whale usually from a boat, you're just looking at it when it's here up at the surface. But with a drone, we can actually see it when it's underwater, and we can see what it's doing, and with really good detail. So here you can see these are two gray whales head standing, which means that they're feeding on the stuff in the seafloor, in the mud. And we can look at these videos. I have 4 years of videos to look at for my PhD, and I'm going to be analyzing it to identify the behaviors that they're doing, and then to look for patterns in, are they doing certain feeding behaviors over similar habitat types? So muddy bottom, rocky bottom, is there kelp? Does their behavior change throughout a season? Do they behave differently in June than October, across years? And also look at individualization. So keep an eye out for more research. I'm early in my PhD, so I don't have much cool results to show you other than these cool videos. But yeah, that's kind of my path so far. If you have questions for me, this is my email. You can follow me on Twitter, and our lab has a blog where we write about the research that we're all doing if you want to follow along. And with that, I will take any questions.
Fantastic, Clara. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and giving us insight into the path that you took to get where you are today. So we have a great question from someone wanting to know what a normal day researching whales looks like for you. And so how does that differ from studying marine biology in your undergrad? I know that could probably take you another 15 minutes to answer, but if you want to go ahead and take a crack at it.
Yeah, I'll give you a very quick, I would say I have 2 different kinds of days. Obviously, probably more, but 2 broad categories are fieldwork days and then kind of all the other days. So fieldwork days probably are the most different from anything I got to do in undergrad. So our fieldwork's out of Newport, which is actually great because it's so local. So there's no kind of packing and no flying somewhere and being on a ship. We can just leave from home. But on those days, I'm up at 5 in the morning, drive to Newport, get in the boat, and then we're in the field for 7-ish hours. We're on the boat all day, nonstop. We look for whales, we find the whales. It's both exhausting and incredible. We're taking pictures of them, flying the drone, we collect their poop, and you're just out on the boat all day. And then after the day's over, I come home, and then I have to do photo ID. And that's kind of what my field work looks like now, are kind of days on the water on the boat. I've also gotten to do field work. I was just on the NOAA ship, the Shimada, as a marine mammal observer, staring at the water all day. So it's a lot of staring at the water, which is nice. And so that's the field work, which is also kind of like, that's the cool, what you see in the media, right? The people with the drones flying them over the whales in the boat, which is amazing. But honestly, that's maybe 10% of my life, maybe. The rest of it are the days that look somewhat similar to undergrad, in that I'm just sitting here at my desk at my computer doing analysis, reading the literature. I am still taking classes, but it is a bit different because it's not just coursework, and it's all the courses I'm in are ones that I know are really interesting and exciting to me and useful to me. They're not just kind of check boxes. I know what I want to get out of them. And then analysis is all exciting because the fieldwork is amazing. And a lot of people don't love the staring at the computer part, but I love it because that's when you actually get to see what the data means. What's the story? When you're in the field, you have all these questions of, oh, why'd that whale do that? And then you actually get to come home and figure it out by doing the analysis and by kind of doing all the annoying kind of computer parts that I really enjoy. So most of my life is me sitting where I am right now at my desk, staring at a computer, but it's all answering the questions that I'm most excited to answer, if that answers your question.
Like I said, you could go on about that for probably a little bit longer. So thank you for that. And it's always good to realize that, yes, it does look like you could potentially spend all of your days out in the field collecting the data, but it's important to remember that there's time spent back at the computer, which is most likely most of your time, which is what you said. So yeah. Thank you for answering that. And I guess on that same vein, we have some folks that are curious about how the pandemic's impacted your research. Has there been any impact due to COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll actually, to go briefly address that other point, is also there's different kinds of jobs. So if you want to be someone in the field all the time, there's field technician jobs. And if you just want to be inside all the time, there's kind of analyst jobs. So you can find the thing that you get to do what you want to do. In terms of the pandemic, I've been really fortunate with my research in that, first of all, they've been doing field work since before I got here on the project. So I actually have already 4 years of data on hard drives that I have just with me. I have my computer, I have another monitor. I can do all my work from home. Our field work, fortunately, we could have been canceled, but we actually managed to get a plan approved to do field work. So we actually were able to work out of Newport this summer with a limited field team. We wore our masks, and we also, everyone on the team on the boat kind of acknowledged that we were putting ourselves at risk. So this summer we were all careful about not really interacting with many other people and kind of just to keep everyone in the lab safe. But we were a small group of 3 or 4 people that kind of did field work this summer. So, and we got our plan approved by OSU with all the kind of social distancing and sanitizing. So we got really lucky that our plan got approved and we got to do our field work this year. But yeah, now I'm taking classes online, like I'm sure most of you are, and doing my research from home.
Very good. Thank you, Clara. I appreciate that. And keep the questions coming. We may not be able to answer all of them live, but we are going to work hard with Clara after the presentations today, and she can get to as many questions or answer as many of those questions as possible. So thank you for your patience. We're going to try and get to as many as we can. We may have time for about one more or so. So we have someone that's curious, did you get to fly the drone? And maybe I'll add to the question, like what kind of process did you have to go through if you did fly the drone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't flown over whales. I have flown a little in practice. To be honest with you, the flying is the part that might appeal to me the least of all of it. I just get really nervous being responsible for holding a couple $1,000s worth of technology over the ocean. That's just me. But I am in training to fly. And the process is, first you have to get your Part 107, which is your pilot's license from the FAA, and then a lot of practice, which, I mean, the pilot license is anyone could get your Part 107, and you don't actually have to show that you can fly the drone to do it. There's no like physical test, it's just a written exam. But in my lab, our current pilot it will train me and show me how to do it, and you just practice in a field a lot is basically the process.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna squeeze one more in if that's okay.
Yes.
So Jasmine has a great question. What's the favorite part of your job?
Oh, my favorite part of my job. That's really hard. I really like all the parts of it. And I think something that just keeps hitting me is that I actually get to be studying whales and I'm getting paid to do it. I said it's been my dream since I was 10. So to like have meetings where we're just like talking about what's that whale doing? It seems so surreal that is my job. But I have to say, I also adore the collaboration aspect. So a lot of it's pretty lonely, especially in COVID, sitting at your desk doing analysis. But I've been really lucky to have really cool friends in the field that we can all collaborate and work on projects together. And so getting to like nerd out with your friends, but have it be your job to do that, it's pretty ideal.
Very cool. Well, again, thank you for participants for all your great questions. We don't have time to get to all of them live, but we're going to work with our presenters and get you those answers and post those to our website along with this recording. So thank you, Clara, for your fantastic presentation and some insights into what it's like to be the eyes from the sky studying whales.